The work of the devil will infiltrate even within the church. Cardinals will oppose cardinals. Bishops will oppose bishops. These words were not written by a pessimistic theologian. They did not come from the mouth of a rebellious schismatic. According to reports of a Marian apparition investigated by the Church in Japan in 1973, these would have been the words of the Mother of God herself, before a deaf nun whose name the world still did not know. And if you think this is disturbing, what was reportedly said next is even more serious. Fire will fall from the sky and will annihilate a great part of humanity. The good as well as the bad will suffer. The survivors will find themselves in such desolation that they will envy the dead. We are not talking about apocalyptic fiction. We are talking about messages attributed to the Virgin Mary in apparitions that the Catholic Church investigated, some of which were approved for the devotion of the faithful not as obligatory articles of faith, but as spiritual aids worthy of attention. As the Church teaches, private revelations can help us live the gospel better, but they add no new doctrine. The criterion is always Christ, Scripture, and the Magisterium. For almost 200 years, in different continents, cultures, and epochs, Marian apparitions have been reported. And when you gather the central messages of these apparitions, especially those approved or recognized by the Church, you discover something that deserves our deepest attention. There is a pattern. There is a consistent message. There is an urgent call to conversion that crosses generations. And that call is becoming increasingly insistent. But here is the question that must be asked at the beginning of 2026. What is Our Lady really asking? And how can we respond to this call now before it's too late? Paris, France. Rue du Bac, 140. Night of July 18 to 19, 1830. Catherine Labouré, a young novice of 24 years, awakens at 11:30 at night. Beside her bed, there is a child of approximately 5 years old, entirely surrounded by light. The child speaks with a clear and urgent voice. "Come to the chapel. The Blessed Virgin awaits you." Catherine hesitates for an instant. It is the middle of the night. The silence of the convent is absolute. But something in that voice, an authority that admits no doubt, compels her to obey. She rises, dresses quickly, and follows the child through the dark corridors. And then, a detail she would never forget. Upon entering the chapel, all the candles are lit, as if it were the middle of a solemn mass, but no one lit them. The chapel should be dark and locked. The child points to the main altar and disappears. And there, seated in the chair where the spiritual director normally sits, is she, the Virgin Mary, dressed in white like a widow, with a veil partially covering her face. Her countenance carries a profound sadness, almost unbearable to contemplate. Catherine runs and kneels at the Virgin's feet, placing her hands on her knees, a gesture of filial intimacy that she would never dare to do with another person. And for 2 hours, 2 entire hours, while the chapel clock marks the passing of the early morning, Mary speaks. And she does not speak of celestial flowers or mystical consolations. She speaks of what is to come. According to the traditional accounts associated with these apparitions, Mary would have warned of difficult times that would come upon France: political crises, religious persecutions, bloodshed. Young Catherine listens, petrified, while the Virgin speaks with maternal solicitude full of urgency. In the following decades, Europe, and especially France, would traverse periods of extraordinary convulsion. The Revolution of 1848, the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, the Paris Commune of 1871, with its scenes of anti-clerical violence, churches profaned, religious persecuted, the Archbishop of Paris himself executed along with other hostages. Many Catholics saw in these events impressive parallels with the warnings attributed to the 1830 apparition. But there was something more in the message transmitted to Catherine. Something that was not just warning, but also promise and remedy. Have a medal struck. All those who wear it with confidence will receive great graces. The miraculous medal, as it became known, spread throughout the world, and wherever it was taken, reports of extraordinary conversions, inexplicable healings, and supernatural protections followed. The essential that the Church embraced was the devotion and the graces linked to the medal, and the fundamental call to conversion, to prayer, and to trust in Mary's intercession. The first request was given: conversion, prayer, trust in Mary's intercession. La Salette, French Alps. The 19th of September 1846, two shepherds climb a mountain. Mélanie Calvat, 15 years old. Maximin Giraud, 11. Poor, semi-literate, almost savage in their simplicity. They barely know how to pray. Suddenly, a light brighter than the sun explodes at the top of the hill. Within the light, there is a woman seated on a rock, with her face in her hands, sobbing inconsolably. The children freeze in terror. The woman slowly rises. She is dressed in resplendent white, with a golden apron covered with luminous roses. But there is something deeply disturbing in the scene. On her shoulders weighs an iron chain, heavy, oppressive, and hanging on that chain, a crucifix with a hammer on one side and pliers on the other. The symbolism is clear even to those ignorant children. Humanity is constantly deciding whether to nail Christ to the cross or free him from it. And at that moment in history, it was nailing. Come closer, my children. Don't be afraid. I am here to tell you great news. The voice is sweet, but laden with a sadness that breaks the heart. The children approach, trembling, and then comes the great news, which is, in reality, a terrible warning. If my people will not submit, I am forced to let go of my son's arm. It is so strong and so heavy that I can no longer hold it back. Try to imagine what these words mean. The Mother of God, she who never said no to God, who accepted being pierced by a sword of sorrow at Calvary, who remained standing beside the cross when all the apostles fled, is expressing the extreme gravity of humanity's spiritual situation. How long have I suffered for you? If I want my son not to abandon you, I must pray for you unceasingly. But you pay no heed. And then Mary begins to list the sins that are pushing humanity toward the abyss. The profanation of Sunday transformed into a day of work and entertainment without God. The casual blasphemy of God's holy name. The abandonment of prayer. The loss of the sense of the sacred. In the following years, the prophecy seems to be fulfilled in devastating fashion. A mysterious plague rots the potato crops of Europe. It is the Great Potato Famine. In Ireland, 1 million people die of hunger. In France and other regions, there are subsistence crises. Revolts break out. Governments fall. There are elements that seem to strongly echo what was transmitted on that mountain. The apparition of La Salette was approved by the Church in 1851 after rigorous investigation. The core of the message called to conversion, to prayer, to the sanctification of Sunday, to penance, was recognized as authentic and worthy of the faith of Catholics. The second request became clear: sanctify Sunday, stop blaspheming, return to the sacraments, truly repent. Lourdes, France. The 11th of February 1858. Bernadette Soubirous is 14 years old, sick with asthma and tuberculosis, scrawny, almost a walking skeleton. She is the eldest daughter of a miserably poor family. On that cold February morning, Bernadette goes out with her sister and a friend to gather firewood near the Gave River. And then, while she is alone, she hears a wind, but the trees don't move. She looks up toward the grotto of Massabielle, a dirty place where pigs feed, and she sees, in a cleft of the rock, a golden light. Within the light, a young woman of indescribable beauty, dressed in pure white, with a blue sash at her waist and a rosary of white beads in her fingers. The lady smiles at her, a smile of tenderness so profound that Bernadette will feel its warmth for the rest of her life. She falls to her knees instinctively and tries to pray the rosary. The lady then prays with her, She moves her lips in the Hail Marys. She passes the beads of the rosary through her luminous fingers. During 18 apparitions over several months, Mary does not bring Bernadette prophecies of wars or future punishments. She doesn't need to. France had already received those warnings in Paris and La Salette. What Mary brings to Lourdes is another dimension, equally urgent: the call to personal penance. Penance! 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 She repeats 3 times, like someone knocking on a door that no one wants to open. Pray for sinners. Go kiss the ground in penance for sinners. Bernadette obeys, even knowing that the crowd observing her will laugh at her. She kisses the dirty ground of the grotto. She crawls on her knees. She eats the bitter herbs that grow there, all in penance. And when Mary orders her, "Go drink and wash at the fountain," Bernadette looks around. There is no fountain, only mud and dirt, but she obeys. She digs the ground with her hands. The mud dirties her face. The crowd laughs, mocks, insults her. But then, the water begins to gush, first a trickle, then a stream. And this water, which continues flowing in the grotto of Lourdes to this day, becomes associated with extraordinary healings. Since then, thousands of healings have been reported, dozens of them recognized as miracles by the Church after rigorous medical investigation. But beyond the physical healings, there is something much greater: the conversions. Millions of sinners who went to Lourdes hardened and returned with broken hearts. And when Bernadette asks for the 4th time who that lady is, she receives an answer that leaves theologians amazed: "I am the Immaculate Conception." Bernadette doesn't understand what this means. She is an illiterate girl, but she runs to the parish priest and repeats the words in French, afraid of forgetting them. The priest is deeply impressed. Only 4 years earlier, in 1854, Pope Pius IX had solemnly proclaimed the dogma of Mary's Immaculate Conception, something an ignorant girl could never know or invent on her own. Many saw in this a providential confirmation of the dogma proclaimed by the Church. The 3rd request became undeniable: penance. Concrete, humiliating, sacrificial penance. Penance for sinners. Pontmain, France, the 17th of January, 1871. It is night. Snow covers the small village in northern France. The Franco-Prussian War is devastating the country. The Prussians are advancing relentlessly. Pontmain is in the path. There is no human hope. Eugène Barbadette, 12 years old, is helping his father in the barn when suddenly he stops and points to the starry sky. "Father, look! A beautiful lady in the sky!" The father sees nothing, but Eugène insists, and when the younger brother arrives, he also sees. Suspended in the air is Mary. She wears a dark blue dress covered with golden stars. A crown shines on her head. She smiles, but it is a sad smile. The entire village gathers. Dozens of people crowd in the snow, but only the children can see the apparition. The adults do not see, but they do not doubt, and they fall to their knees in the snow and begin to pray, rosary after rosary. The night is freezing, but no one moves. Everyone prays with intense fervor. And then, gradually, a white banner appears at the Virgin's feet, and golden letters begin to form. "But pray, my children." The crowd prays with even more intensity. New letters appear. "God will answer you in a short time." And finally, "My son allows himself to be moved." That is, prayer works. Mercy can still be reached. God still hears. 11 days later, something extraordinary happens. The Prussian army stops a few kilometers from the village. The order to retreat is given. Pontmain is spared. A few days later, the war ends. Many in the village saw in this the direct answer to that night's prayer. The apparition of Pontmain was approved by the Church in 1872. The 4th request was a promise: pray, pray much, pray unceasingly, because God hears. Fatima, Portugal, the 13th of May, 1917. Europe is in flames. World War I has already killed millions. Portugal is internally torn apart. The Republic proclaimed in 1910 is violently anti-clerical. It is in this context of darkness that three children, Lucia dos Santos, 10 years old, and her cousins Francisco Marto, 9, and Jacinta Marto, 7, begin to receive visits from heaven. On the 13th of May, 1917, while tending sheep in Cova da Iria, a light brighter than the sun descends upon a small holm oak, and there she is, a lady of indescribable beauty, dressed in white, with a rosary hanging from her fingers. "Do not be afraid, I will not harm you." And then comes the request: pray the rosary every day to obtain peace for the world and the end of the war. And in the first apparition, Mary asks them a question that should echo in every Catholic heart. Do you wish to offer yourselves to God to endure all the sufferings He may wish to send you as an act of reparation for the sins by which He is offended and in supplication for the conversion of sinners? 3 poor children answered, "Yes, we do." On the 13th of July, 1917, Mary opens before the children's eyes the most terrifying vision: hell. Lucia would later describe, "We saw what appeared to be a sea of fire, and plunged in this fire were demons and souls that looked like transparent black or bronze embers in human form. They were floating in the fire, amid cries and groans of pain and despair that horrified us and made us tremble with fear." The 3 children scream in terror, and they raise their eyes pleadingly to the Virgin Mary, who looks at them with deep sadness and says, "You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my immaculate heart." And then comes the prophetic message: the current war will end. But if humanity does not stop offending God, in the reign of Pius XI, another worse one will begin. Russia will spread its errors throughout the world. The good will be martyred. Various nations will be annihilated. 4 months later, in November 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution explodes, and what follows seems to strongly echo what was transmitted: systematic persecution of the Church, millions of martyrs. In 1938, an aurora borealis illuminates the skies of all Europe. Lucia recognizes it. It is the sign Mary had mentioned. 6 months later, Hitler invades Austria. 1 year later, World War II begins. There are notable parallels between these events and what was transmitted at Fatima. Mary did not come to Fatima only to warn. She came to save. And she gave the remedy, along with the diagnosis, the concrete requests of Fatima. First, pray the rosary every day. Second, offer sacrifices for the conversion of sinners. Third, practice devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Fourth, make the reparatory communion of the 5 first Saturdays: confession, communion, rosary, and 15 minutes of meditation on the mysteries of the rosary, for 5 consecutive months, on the first Saturday of each month. According to the promises linked to Fatima, Our Lady obtains for those who live this devotion with faith and perseverance special graces at the hour of death, helping the person not to be eternally lost. Fifth, live in a state of grace. Akita, Japan, the 13th of October 1973. Sister Agnes Sasagawa, a completely deaf Japanese nun, is praying before a wooden statue of Our Lady when something extraordinary is reported. The statue would have begun to present inexplicable phenomena. The local bishop, after careful analysis, recognized the events as worthy of veneration in the diocese. And on 3 occasions, according to Sister Agnes, Mary would have spoken to her interiorly. The third message was the most serious. If men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. Fire will fall from the sky and will annihilate a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. And then comes the warning about divisions within the church itself. The work of the devil will infiltrate even within the church, in such a way that cardinals will oppose cardinals, bishops will oppose bishops. The priests who venerate me will be despised. The church will be full of those who accept compromises. The warning becomes even more specific. The spiritual battle is within the church itself, and the only remedy is the same: prayer, especially the rosary, penance, and unwavering fidelity to Christ. Kibeho, Rwanda. The 28th of November, 1981. Alphonsine Mumureka, a 16-year-old student, is serving dinner when she suddenly falls to her knees and enters ecstasy. In the following months, other young women also begin to receive apparitions, and what Mary would have shown was deeply disturbing. Visions of extreme violence, rivers of blood, mass destruction. No one understood. Rwanda in 1981 was an apparently peaceful country. 13 years later, in April 1994, the Rwandan genocide exploded. In just 100 days, between 800,000 and 1 million people were murdered. In light of what was experienced, many saw in the messages of Kibeho a prophetic warning. The Church officially approved the apparitions of Kibeho in 2001. It was the first Marian apparition approved in Africa. The request: reconciliation, forgiveness, concrete love of neighbor. If stories like this touch your faith and make you reflect on eternity, subscribe to the channel. This way, you help us continue spreading the truths of our faith and the works that reveal God's mercy. Now, stop and reflect. Paris, La Salette, Lourdes, Pontmain, Fatima, Akita, Kibeho. Do you see a common thread? In all, absolutely all, the Virgin Mary offers the same remedy: prayer, especially the rosary, penance, sincere conversion, return to the sacraments, life in a state of grace. All these apparitions, to the extent that they were approved by the Church, belong to the category of private revelations. They add nothing to the definitive revelation of Christ, nor are they obligatory matters of faith, but they are offered as help to live the gospel and Catholic doctrine more seriously. And here is the question that 2026 poses to us: what will we do with these requests? How many of us pray the rosary every day? How many go to Mass every Sunday? How many confess regularly? How many do penance? How many practice the 5 first Saturdays? Mary showed us hell at Fatima, not to terrify us, but to make us understand. Hell is real. It exists, and we can end up there if we don't change our lives. Living 2026, honoring Mary's requests, means praying the complete rosary every day, going to Mass and confessing regularly, doing penance, fasting, renouncing, offering sufferings to God, practicing the 5 first Saturdays, sanctifying Sunday, living in a state of grace, praying for the Church, reconciling and forgiving, living the faith with courage. It is simple, but it is not easy, because it requires that we die to ourselves. But it is possible. With God's grace, it is possible. And 2026 can be the year we finally decide to obey. Mary is calling us. Like a mother who sees her children in danger, she does not give up. May the Immaculate Heart of Mary protect us. May the rosary never fall from our hands. May we have the wisdom to listen and the courage to change. While there is still time,